All right, so today we will be talking about softening perfectionism, and I have a lot to say on this this topic. It's a very near and dear one to my heart, and of course, because we are talking about perfectionism, let's all aspire to do this imperfectly together today. And before we get into our topic, let's just take a moment to really arrive and settle here. I imagine this topic well, first, I imagine you may be coming from the middle of your day. You may be starting out your day, ending. So we'll give ourselves a moment to just really arrive and settle, and also to see if there's anything that this topic about perfectionism maybe just naturally brings up. So if you'd like to close your eyes, you're welcome to. If it's more comfortable to keep them open, that's totally fine too. You're just finding a soft gaze. We'll take a few moments to just take some breaths together. Letting the breath be natural, be a little slower than normal. And seeing if you can just bring a gentle attention to the ebb and flow of the breath, the natural rise and fall. And if you can just let yourself be here. Maybe acknowledging but letting go of anything else pulling at your attention. Any to-dos swirling in your head, oh, I forgot to email that person. Maybe jotting anything down that feels really important, but otherwise just gently returning to the breath, the body in this moment. I'm going to invite you to bring to mind your intention for being here today. It may be just a desire for a break, to learn something new. Maybe this topic of softening perfectionism hits something for you. And give you a moment. You don't have to think too hard or figure it out, but just seeing what intention arises for our time together today. When you're ready, I'm going to invite you to take maybe one final big breath in. Long, slow exhale before opening eyes if they've been closed. Returning to our screen together. Welcome, everyone. Oh, it's nice to see even more names and faces. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm Steph Stern. We will be talking about softening perfectionism today. And I'm going to start with a little bit of a definition of perfectionism, which for today we're going to think of as just a desire to be flawless, right? So not just a high expectation for ourselves, but really this sense of kind of unrealistic expectation of perfection. And that can be an expectation that we have for ourselves in terms of who we are, our behaviors, how we show up in the world. And it can also be for things we create, our work, our creative projects. It could be around identity. We want to be the perfect parent, the perfect sibling, the perfect daughter or son. And the challenge with perfectionism is that it can be really depleting. That can be a lot of pressure, so much pressure that maybe we don't even start things that are important to us. Maybe it creates really harsh, self-critical kinds of voices. And there's a lot of research around perfectionism leading to or connecting with burnout and depression, as well as just less creativity and less risk-taking. So our challenge today, or our goal, will be, how do we hold on to our high standards? I'm going to assume all of you are here because you are quite good at what you do, quite competent in general in life, and you don't really want to be less good at these things. So it's not about relaxing our expectations or being too soft or complacent, but how do we stay motivated? How do we do that in a way that's not depleting? So I'm curious, I have a little more I want to share just for framing, but I'm curious to hear from all of you or anyone who wants to share. Where do you notice your perfectionism coming in your life? What kinds of things does your inner perfectionist tend to say? And if anyone wants to just unmute and hop in, you're welcome to. Or if you want to share in chat, gonna pop open the chat window and share. Where do folks notice?
I'm happy to share something. I had this session in my calendar, so I knew about it from the beginning of the week, and I had a little success yesterday. So yesterday I finished the 30 days of yoga with Adrian that I started in January. But the little perfectionist in me was like, oh, but you didn't do them in like one after the other, like in 30 days. It took 6 months. So it's not like, because I think of things that they should be done a certain way, and if they're not done a certain way, then the benefits are not the same. Yes. So yeah, but I did celebrate the success that I finished them, but I was, they weren't in 30 one after the other. So yeah.
Yes. Oh, that's a great example, Brigida. Thank you so much for sharing it. That sounds like a healthy combination, right? You did it, you finished, and there's that voice that's a little critical, a little harsh. Oh, but you didn't do it this way. That can sometimes be depleting. Yeah. Thank you all so much for sharing. I want to share a little bit more about this sense of the difference between what I'm going to call maladaptive perfectionism versus healthy striving. Right. So maladaptive perfectionism is where our perfectionism is getting in the way, where it is feeling more depleting or debilitating. And that tends to be really other focused. We tend to be thinking, what will other people think if I don't live up to these expectations? It tends to be failure oriented. We are afraid that it won't be good enough and that we will ultimately fail in this project, in the relationship. And that often leads us to avoid challenge or procrastinate starting. Can lead to some all or nothing thinking, right? Like Birgitta, like either I did it in 30 days or it's not worth it at all. It took me 6 months. Can I really celebrate that? And it often is tied to feelings, deeper feelings of unworthiness, not good enough. And not just not good enough on this project, but like, oh, I'm not good enough as a human. There's a lot of self-criticism in our internal dialogue that tends to be associated with it. Healthy striving, on the other hand, is more growth-oriented, more a sense of, oh, how can I improve, right? So in Rosemary's wonderful example, it's that sense of, okay, let me think through all the details. Oh, I haven't, this aspect I need to think through more. It's really growth-oriented. And there could actually be an enjoyment in the challenge of that, right? There's a lot of care that I hear in that story, a lot of concern for others. So that could have a sense of connection and enjoyment. So valuing high standards and seeing things in terms of how do we make it better? Healthy striving also tends to be self-compassionate. So when we don't meet our own standards, it's sort of like, okay, well, I did the best I could. How could I do better next time? But it's not as harsh or critical. As I think you are starting to see, there's a real difference in the underlying driver between the maladaptive perfectionism and healthy striving. And that's really fear. I love this quote from Elizabeth Gilbert from her book, Big Magic. I think perfectionism is just fear in fancy clothes and a mink coat, pretending to be elegant when really it's just terrified. Because underneath the shiny veneer, perfectionism is nothing more than a deep existential angst that says again and again, I'm not good enough and I'll never be good enough. So our premise today is we're going to get to know our inner perfectionist and get to hear a little bit about their fears. And through that sense of understanding, oh, what's the actual fear here? And hopefully right-sizing it a little bit, we're going to see if we can soften that inner perfectionist, shift towards a little bit more of a growth mindset and towards that healthy striving characteristics. So I'm going to first ask you to think of a situation or a project that you want to work with. So something coming up in your life where you feel a sense of that maladaptive perfectionism. Maybe it's something that you are afraid of getting started. Maybe it's something where you feel that inner self-criticism is really harsh. I'll give you a moment to just pick out a situation or project that you'd like to work with. Okay, when you have one, we're going to do about a 10 or 12-minute little guided practice here. So you can find a posture that's comfortable. It doesn't have to be anything too stiff or rigid. Don't let your perfectionist pick the posture, but just something sort of relaxed, alert. And if you'd like to, you're welcome to close your eyes. I'm going to ask you to evoke this project or situation that you want to work with. Maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's a work project, maybe it's a new yoga challenge. And take a moment to just feel, what does it do in the body? Do you notice more tightness, constriction, different forms of energy, openness? Take a moment to also see, what do you say to yourself about this situation or project? Maybe there's a list of worries. Maybe it's directly, this is not going to be good enough. I didn't do this right. Listening. And then letting this inner perfectionist know that you hear them. And let's ask your perfectionist to just sit or stand in front of you. Allow them to say whatever they tend to say. And feeling the impact of their words on your body. And if you have a sense of feeling tight, shut down, criticized, maybe even worthless, or if there's fear towards this perfectionist, that might be the response of kind of an inner part who's scared or feels criticized. We're going to send them a little care and compassion. And we can invite any parts that are afraid or feel criticized. They can go to a safe place or be with a safe person. I invite you to make that offer, even if it doesn't really make logical sense. Just offering any parts that are scared, feel criticized, they can go to a safe place. Maybe hide out in a back room, or they can go and be with a safe person. You can even come over here, hang out with me for the duration of this exercise. And then returning attention to this inner perfectionist. Just noticing, how do you feel towards your perfectionist? This one who holds really high standards for you. And just noticing if there is a part of you that feels a little defensive, wants the perfectionist to change or go away. Just asking this one to give you some space. We're not going to let the perfectionist take over. We just want to listen to what it has to say, hear about what it's afraid of. And I guess it will have some surprising things to share. Let's see if we can just be mindfully curious about this perfectionist. sending some sense of connection, curiosity, this part of you that holds this perfectionist tendency. And let's ask to the perfectionist, what would you like me to know? What would you like me to know? You don't have to think of an answer. Thinking parts can relax, but just see if an answer comes. And you might ask them, why are your high standards so important? Why is it so important to be flawless? And you might ask, what is your intention for me? How are you trying to help? What do you want for me in my life? Asking the perfectionist, how are they trying to help you? And if you're getting a sense of their positive intention for you, see if you can earnestly send them some appreciation. If this perfectionist is trying to help you achieve, maybe trying to protect you from other people's judgment, maybe trying to earn a sense of love and belonging. Seeing if you can authentically send it some appreciation and gratitude. Another question might be, what is the perfectionist afraid of? What is the perfectionist afraid of if it didn't do its job? And again, no need to think of an answer, just seeing if the inner perfectionist can share about its fears. What's it afraid would happen if it didn't achieve these high standards? You might deepen the understanding of this fear by asking, and what's so scary about that? What's so scary about that? I'd also just ask, is there more this perfectionist wants you to know about what it's afraid of? Is there more it wants you to understand about what's so scary? You might also ask this perfectionist, how or where did it learn this role? How or where did it learn this role or learn to have such high exacting standards for you? When did it learn this? And if it has been doing this job for you for a long time, you might just offer some recognition. Been trying to help you, protect you, probably for many, many years. You might ask, would it be willing to soften a little? Would it be willing to trust you? Bring in a little more of a sense of growth, challenge, learning. What might it take to make a little bit of a shift? Let's take a moment to just thank the perfectionist for letting it know whatever it did, thanking it for holding these really high standards and good intentions for you. And take a moment to just recognize here we are in a group of almost 20, many folks that are struggling with similar things. Just recognizing these high standards are something we all struggle with sometimes. Part of being human, part of balancing different aspirations that we have. And before we close, I'm going to invite you to just bring that situation or project that you started with back into mind. Noticing how it feels now to think of it. I'm going to invite you to also just think of what might you tell a friend. If you had a friend that was struggling with the same circumstance, facing the same kind of project, how might you advise them? And just noticing how that feels in the body. Noticing if there's any shift from where you started, or maybe there may not be. Noticing if there's any clarity, anything you want to remember, take away. We'll take just a couple of deep breaths together before we come back to our Zoom screen. Bringing a gentle attention back to the breath. Coming back to the body. When you're ready, opening eyes if they've been closed. And take a moment to just take in the screen, maybe take in looking the room around you, taking in light. Welcome back to our Zoom screen together, our shared space.